welcome to another episode of that Grief Relief podcast. My name is Katie Overy. Don't know why I needed to say that. The name is on the title and the artwork, and I've already spoken anyway. I'm a bit delirious actually because it's a Zoom recording because I'm on Zoom. Our guest today is from Chicago in the States, and it is 10:15 in the evening here in Dubai, but I've managed to grab hold of Crystal in the middle of her working day. How are you, Crystal?
I'm so good. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yeah. I'm really happy to have you on because I'm going to paint a picture for you if you're listening now.
I love painting.
I reached out to Crystal because Crystal had posted about ambiguous grief and disenfranchised grief on Instagram. So I reached out to Crystal, and it's never an easy subject to broach. I was like, hi, Crystal, hope you don't mind me asking, but you seem open about this subject. I have this podcast. I was wondering. Then this reply comes from Crystal going, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, she's just so excited. Crystal, why? Why are you so excited to talk about this?
Because, I am finally ready to talk about it, first of all, because I think it's a different kind of grief in that I needed time to sit with it in order to, if you would have asked me 2 years ago, I would have been like, I don't want to talk about anything. But then when things start happening and the world keeps moving, and I think with this pandemic too, everything, compounds, and I just was always looking for my voice, and I found it through social media. And you know how you're trying to get people to listen to you on social media, and you feel like you're posting the posts and you're doing the algorithms. I'm on TikTok now because of this, because I was like, I need to find an audience. And then so you're searching for an audience, and then when someone's like, I want to interview you for my podcast on grief, to be honest, how you worded your DM, I was like, I don't even need to listen to an episode. First of all, I'm mad that I'm not already listening to it, because they're hard to find. Grief is not a subject everyone likes to talk about. And I ended up making that my focus in school. So I was in grad school when a lot of this happened. And so grief tended to be my approach to therapy. I used to work a lot in grief and loss. So everything just compounded. And I'm like, I hold so much information, and I just there's so many ways to make community out of telling our stories. So the more that I meet people, there's a woman I just met on TikTok, and we have almost the exact same story. And she's one of my favorite people now, because how would I have ever found her without TikTok,
Yeah, and that's the thing. And because just if you're listening and not watching on YouTube, Crystal and I have a bit of a strange connection on Zoom. So I'm actually nodding, but I don't want to say anything and give agreeing that I am listening, because it cuts her off her audio, and I don't want to do that. So yeah, and that's it. Thank you so much for your kind words sort of initially, but you're absolutely right. It's when I've been speaking to some of the guests, some of them, they come to my house here in Dubai. Some of them I meet on Zoom, and it's amazing the amount of people are like, yeah, can't wait to talk about this. And I'm like, really? So to come on here now and see your amazing bubbly face, and you're beautiful, and it's got Crystal's got this huge curly hair, and she's covered in tattoos that we've already had a chat about, and we're going to hear more about. And she just has this beaming smile, and I'm like, cool, we're going to talk about grief. It's cool. It's a really, really weird one. Okay, so I'm not even going to lead into the post that I reached out to you on Instagram for. I'm just going to say, Crystal Renee Drake, can you tell me your story?
Yeah. So I was born in 1983 to my parents, who were 18 and 20 at the time ish, really young parents in the early 80s. My dad's parents were very religious. My grandfather was a pastor of a church, and my grandmother worked very closely with him, and also ran a restaurant. My grandma had a history of working in orphanages when she was my age, when she was younger. So I always love to add that part, when you hear what happens next. So my mom had me when she was very young. She left when I was a baby. She left and came back, and then my sister was born. I just put this story together in bits and pieces, because you hear it so much when you're little, you just get used to it. And then I went, a long period of time without even talking about it. And here I am now, like on a podcast, like trying to piece it together. So then my sister was born and my mom left. So the story goes, and left my dad with 2 little girls in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I think they lived outside of a town called Paradise, which is really funny. I like to do a lot of art about it because like Paradise for most people is a beautiful place, but Paradise for me is a place where there's a lot of generational trauma, a lot of like ancestral things. My mom's family is also Native, but I'm not connected to that side of my family because of her leaving when I was a baby. And all of their generational trauma and things that communicate, like I'm seen as an outsider. I'm seen as like, I think I'm better than everyone because I was raised by my dad's parents who had money. They were white, you know, so like we can figure out that I had a lot of privilege in that and how I was raised, you know, so I was able to get an education. We still like struggled. I mean, you can imagine like living off of Social Security checks. Grandparents are raising kids and my dad is in and out of work and things. So, and helping, he lived next door growing up. Yeah. So my mom ended up getting really sick when I was in graduate school. So like fast forward, you know, I was raised by my grandparents, beautiful childhood, grew up in a church, in a restaurant, and like on Lake Superior, like I learned how to swim at Pendle's Creek. It's the most beautiful beach in the entire world if anyone ever goes there.
So you had an amazing upbringing.
Amazing grandparents. You know, like I said, my grandma worked in an orphanage. So beautiful. I had a little sister, you know. And then I got older and I went to school to become an art therapist because my grandmother who had raised me had dementia and I was helping take care of her at the end of her life. And with my dad's sister and my dad, and because I was of the age, you know, to like help out. And this was the woman who had devoted her whole life, the end of her life, to like helping me, you know, grandparents starting over again, you know, with a baby. Yeah. So she ended up passing away when I was in undergrad. So in university, she passed away. And then I went on to go to grad school after she died to become an art therapist because I saw how much art therapy helped older adults with Alzheimer's. That was my initial, like, this is amazing. I want to do this. I'm an artist. I finally figured it, you know, quit bartending and we're going to go to school. I ended up still bartending, you know, throughout school because it's amazing. And bartenders are also therapists. So that helped a lot with a lot of yeah, I would use that in my interviews sometimes for because most of my work history was industry, and I was like, but I'm a good bartender. Like I, you know, have done the things. So and listened to the problems and the things and the people and given advice. Anyways, so my grandparents actually died on the same day, 14 years apart, which is another fun part of my story that I love to tell because yeah, we like to say it's like The Notebook, but with like a to be continued because my grandma wanted to see my sister and I like grow up more. Unfortunately, she missed my sister's wedding, but she got to meet like my nephews and stuff. So that was really sweet. And yeah, so I had death a lot in my family. This tattoo says love, and it's the first tattoo I got, and it was the last thing that my grandfather said to me. So I was there when he was actively dying too, which was really beautiful. And to have those memories, he died when I was in high school. So like my life like started very early, like me and grief and loss, because my family got it. Like they understood that they couldn't hide it from me. Like death is inevitable. And like, we're going to bring Crystal to the funeral. We're going to involve her in funeral planning. I remember picking out flowers. And I make a lot of art about like why we give people flowers when they die. Like, I think that's such an interesting topic. It'd be a whole nother thing.
And it's a strange one. Sorry to interrupt. Is that now there's a lot of funerals where people say no flowers.
Yeah. Yeah. We would do that too. We would put like in lieu of flowers.
Yeah.
And I made some of that too, because that's the only time I ever had read the phrase in lieu of. I remember asking my dad, I was like, what does in lieu of mean? Like, what? When you're writing obituaries and stuff. It's so funny to think about that, but I have a memory of writing obituaries in high school.
Yeah, it's not your usual high school memory, that's for sure, but yeah.
But so yeah, I assumed a lot of responsibilities, you know, with them being older, and I helped out a lot. And went on to be an art therapist. So again, with the flowers, I was actually in a class with one of my favorite teachers, Leslie Hawley Reagan. She is an amazing art therapist, and I was lucky to have her as a supervisor. And the assignment was for our lifespan class, and we had to make art about grief, death, the end of life kind of assignment. So you had to make art about it, write a paper about it, you know, because you're an art therapist. So you're like books and art. So like people sometimes art school is easier. It's actually harder because we have to like not only do all the research and all the APA style writing, on top of it, I'm also like making a pillow and staying up all night. So that's what I did for that project, was a pillow. And I started working on it at the, you know, beginning of the semester, because I was like, I know what I'm going to make. This is my favorite assignment, like totally up my alley. Finally, we're going to talk about grief and loss. Because again, you don't really talk about that a lot in school, which is really disappointing and caused me a lot more grief, because I was surrounded by therapists during this time too. So my teachers are art therapists. They're also like some of the best art therapists. I hate to say it like that, not that there's better, but like I went to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Like I had like an idea that this was going to be an amazing experience, and it ended up being one of the most difficult experiences of my life, because I was going through, so my mom died, her brother died, my grandparents, her parents both died, all within like a year and a half while I was working as a therapist. So your internship, when you're a therapist, you're not just getting people coffee, you're like starting groups. I was doing grief groups. I was working and I was setting up, sorry, it's funny to think about. I laugh about it now. I was setting up an art therapy program in the neurology unit of Presence Resurrection Medical Center here in Chicago. It's now AMITA, but I was trying to like start an art therapy program at that hospital while this is all going on. And I'm in school. And I'm also like bartending and helping like manage a restaurant on the weekends, because like I don't have the financial support, because my mom is like she left, like she's never gonna help. You know, my dad doesn't have the financial means at the time to help me. My grandparents are gone. Like I've had to do it on my own forever, you know. So I have to work. And your teachers are like, well, maybe you just don't work too much. And I'm like, but how do I survive then? So you're caught in like that.
And were you living on your own at this point, or were you still living with your father, or was it?
Oh, I was living on my own, but I had
living on your own. Okay, yeah, but totally independent, self-sufficient kind of thing.
Yeah. And my partner, I will just add, I don't want to say anything rude, but he ended up having an affair when my mom died. And I'm sharing that not to throw him under the bus, because that's not what this is. And we have a lot of mutual friends still. So I want to like definitely say like, my mom dying, yes, it was a part of that. And no, I don't take responsibility for him having an affair. But looking back, you have to like take the whole picture. Like I'm never even home. Like I'm just trying to get through grad school. And then I found out my partner, he told me that he had an affair when my mom died. And I was just like, wow. Like I didn't even know, with someone I knew. And I like had no idea, because it's like, how do I was not taking care of myself, clearly. And then I found out that I needed to have a hysterectomy, which I wanted. But my endometriosis was so bad, and I was like in and out of the hospital, like just bleeding really bad. Again, no one ever wants to talk about that. So you just keep it inside, and your doctors are like, you're going to be fine. And meanwhile, they're looking at like ultrasounds of my abdomen, and their faces were like shocked. Like they like how your face looks right now, like kind of like cry. That's how they would look at my ultrasound screen while I'd be like on the table, and they'd be doing an ultrasound because I was having such bad periods. And they'd be like, you know what, you'll be fine. You're going to be fine. And I ended up finding a doctor. I had to find a doctor who would do it. He's amazing. He's one of the best surgeons. I was so privileged to have him. And I had insurance because I was in school, and in order to go to the School of the Art Institute, they charge you for health insurance. So thank God, or whoever, the universe, that I was in that position at that time, because I had like 3 weeks left of school while I'm writing my thesis on my mom dying, because then I chose to write my thesis on it because that's me. I love research and writing. And I was like, oh, I'll just write my thesis on my mom dying because I know that really well. I remember being in my studio typing and just crying and being like, I'm so sick of this thesis. Like, I hated my thesis. My thesis advisor and I weren't getting along. Everyone wanted me to talk about how my mom was Indigenous in my thesis, but like I didn't know, and I felt like it was being exploited, because it's like I want to come into the picture of identifying as Native when I don't know anything about being Native. I'd love to know if anyone listening to this can help me. Like, that's another thing I'm also searching for, because I just have what it says on her death certificate because my aunt won't talk to me because we had a political disagreement. So she has two sisters, but one doesn't like me at all and asked for my mom's urn back while I was leaving her funeral with it. No one wanted to dump my mom's ashes. My brother, I have a half brother.
I don't mean to laugh. Carry on.
No, this is so good. This is why I want to talk about it, because this happens, when we don't talk about it. And
I'm sitting here eating my sweet potato fries, like I said, that just arrived. But Crystal said, please eat your dinner, please eat. Oh, okay.
I did, and I love sweet potato fries. I would pull over on the side of the road for sweet potato fries if they were on a sign.
So sorry, you said you went back, your aunt stopped you leaving with your mum's urn, and then you said something about your half brother?
Yeah, I have a half brother. So my mom had another baby. He was born and I didn't know about him till he was older, and we met a few times. He's super cool, or he was super cool until my mom died. He took responsibility for caring for her because she raised him, and he understood. He was cool at first. He was like, you know what, you don't need to do anything. Like, it's already too much. I called her once when she was in the nursing home, but all she wanted to do was talk about him and ask me if I was married and if I was like had a boyfriend, and I was like trying to figure out if I was queer or not at the time, like it's just like,
oh my God, this is just mental. Like, I nearly choked on a sweet potato fry.
We love it. I remember my last phone conversation with my mom. I was on the phone in Chicago traffic. I know you're not supposed to be, but it was speakerphone. And when you're stuck in traffic. And I was like, what the hell? I'll just give her one call to see. I heard she was in a nursing home, and I was on my way home from my internship. And I was like, we'll see how this goes. And I called her, and my mom still talked to her death like she was 18. So like she stopped maturing after I was born immediately. And we know this now through like science and like the body keeps the score, all these things. But like, it's true. When I would call my mom and I would say, hi, Mom, I heard you're not feeling very well. Jonathan said you're in the hospital. And she was like, oh my God, they took my car away from me. You wouldn't believe it. I need to get out of here. And I'm like in traffic, and I know that she's actively dying. I know that she needs a liver transplant, but she's not going to get one because they don't give liver transplants to people who have substance use issues or I don't like, yeah. And like, that was because we can trace it back. Everyone always told me she was young and stupid. But I mean, if we look at the facts, she was a young mother. Yeah, she stopped maturing after I was born because of science and because of biology and like trauma. My grandpa wasn't the nicest person in the world. I don't know, I wasn't there, but I heard that he like was pretty abusive to my grandmother when he was younger and drinking. And my grandmother would bring my mom out to come sit with her when my grandpa would come home from the bar. And that's all anyone would tell me. So like, I don't know what happened, but I know what happened, like,
yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's this weird thing. My sister described it perfectly. I called my sister after. So I actually finished the project that I had in that class. I finished sewing my pillow for my death project, put it down, went to bed, shut off the light. My dad called me. He said, your mom died. And I said, of course she did. And then he was like, are you okay? And I was like, yes, I'm fine. So then I called my sister And I said, are you okay? And she's like, it's just that it's like, maybe someday will never come. Because it was always like, you knew that she was never going to show up for us ever. Because there were a million, she did show up for my high school graduation, and I ended up being mad that she was there because I didn't want her there.
Yeah.
But where you wish that she would show up, and she couldn't, and she didn't. And, you know, and then when my sister said it's like, maybe someday will never happen, it was like, it was that. And she took it with her because she died. Like it's almost like she got the last word too.
Yeah.
So you're angry. I still get angry about it. And people are always like, you need to, and I'm a therapist. Like everyone's always like, you need to work on your anger when it comes to grief. And I'm like, how though? Like she legit got the last word too. And then she just like, so like, maybe I just am angry sometimes about it. And that's why I love thinking about grief as like a ebb and flow instead of a linear thing, because it leaves room for me being upset still.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we talk about grief a lot on this podcast in terms of it's not linear. And if anything, it's just this squiggly mess, and you just got to try and work your way through it. A friend of mine gave a really good analogy about how it feels like spaghetti in your head. And the reason why she said spaghetti, she said, because it's always moving. And so once I try and pinpoint where I am or how I'm feeling, and that bit of spaghetti's moving, and you're like, oh my God, because you can visualize that, right?
Right. I can tell as soon as you said spaghetti, but I was like, yes. And then you said, but it's moving. And it's exactly like spaghetti that's moving. Or when you're driving on a highway and you know they have all the overpasses and all the cars are going every way. It's like those are all the grief emotions. And like you never know what one you're gonna get. Like it's just this morning, right? And this has never happened to me. Well, stuff like this happens to me a lot. I'm not gonna lie. But I'm unpacking. I moved back to Chicago last year. So I was unpacking, and I found my parents' photo album the other day, and I picked it up today to show a friend who was over, and this picture fell out, and it's a picture of my mom when she was pregnant with me at the wedding. And I was like, my friend was like, you look just like her. And I'm like, that's so true. Like, thank you. Cause like, I don't know who she was, but like, I look like her. So like, I don't know, like, what does that mean? And that's my only connection to her is like, that I look like.
And how do you feel when you saw that, and then when someone said that to you?
When I saw the picture, I was like, oh my God. She's like, in the picture, she's wearing this really gaudy 80s with the hat wedding dress, and she's holding her stomach and her mouth is open like a baby kicked her. So she was pregnant when I was born, and she had to get married because my dad's parents, you know, pastor of a church, son, 1983, you just got married. Like they don't really look that happy in all their pictures, to be honest. It's kind of funny. I was dead at the picture of them standing at the altar because my mom has resting bitch face like I do really bad. And my dad looks like kind of excited and scared. And then my chair broke. We're just gonna get right back up. But yeah, to see that picture of her, I was like, oh my God, this is like, I don't have any pictures of us. I have another one where she's holding me, but she looks like she's scared of me. She has like that disgusting face, and it's postpartum depression. Yeah. We weren't really talking about that in 1983. Not that it's an excuse. I'm not excusing her for any behavior, but understanding more about mental health and generational trauma and even colonialism has like really opened up my mind to my history and how everything is connected, and with my identity of being biracial and everything. It's like, holy, you know, like, excuse my language, but like, I'm just like, everything is so connected. And here I am trying to figure it out with like a photograph, you know, or like a hashtag.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. And gosh, I'm grateful for that hashtag. So hang on, I'm using an expression that my friend Claire will kill me for. There's a lot to unpack here, Crystal.
Yeah.
But I want to start, let's start, because obviously it's extremely serious. I've eaten my sweet potato fries too seriously. Your hysterectomy and what have you, that's extremely serious. And I definitely want to speak about that. I just want to try and work out some timelines with your mum. So you were born in 83. Your mum sort of came back. You had your little sister. When was your sister born?
84. So
oh,
like
fine.
Right
okay,
after.
so super close. Then she went when you were how old, do you think?
Right after Danielle was born, I was told. So I was probably like an infant. Like there's a story that tells, that I was an infant and he came home from the bar and my mom wanted to go out but couldn't find a babysitter. So she put newspapers in my crib to keep me busy and went out to the bar. And my dad came home from work and found me in my crib with newspapers. And he's like, you were this baby and you were just covered in black ink. And it's like become a joke in our family. But like now I have a material to work with because I'm an art therapist and or just an artist. I use newspaper in some of my projects because of that memory.
Oh,
it's
my
like
goodness.
A way for me to.
So, my goodness. Okay. So she was again, we're not excusing her behavior, but obviously I don't know her. So she was clearly a troubled woman for whatever reason. She's got, she has to be troubled to leave her children.
Exactly.
So that's that. And then this is where, because forgive me, the high school and undergrad and everything, I can't work out the ages because obviously you have a different academic system. So how old were you then when you first found out that your mother was suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's? Sorry, was it under dementia?
My grandmother started to get Alzheimer's when I had just around the time when I turned 30. So like right around my 30th.
Oh, it was your grandmother that had Alzheimer's?
Yeah.
What did your mom die of?
Substance use. So she was a big drinker a lot. And I don't know what kind of drugs, but it's kind of funny because when you grow up in a small town, you meet people and they're like, we didn't know Kim had kids. We used to party with your mom all the time. And I would say, well, what'd you guys do? And they'd be like, well, we're not going to tell you. Like, you don't need to know. And if I knew that they were drinking and they would tell me, but they wouldn't tell me the other stuff. So like, use your imagination, if she's like so much that she dies, like, I'm sure that wasn't the only, she smoked a lot too. I smoked. So whenever I see Newports, I always think of her.
How old were you? And then in turn, how old was your mum when she passed away? Early 30s.
Her late 50s. I was in my early 30s. I really can't honestly off the top of my head remember her,
okay,
I was like 34.
And who was the first person to pass away in that that period?
My grandma. So I was really close with my grandma because she was your grandma's, I was the oldest granddaughter on both sides. I was a surprise, like my parents didn't really know each other very long also before they got married. Like very quickly I came and then they got, it's so good. I love it. My grandma died that I happened to be home for something else. And I remember I got to see her one more time. She was on hospice. So it was like a long, beautiful end. And my sister's best friend from high school, her mom was the hospice nurse. So like I knew everyone in the room. It was really beautiful. My grandpa was helping a lot. He really took really good care of her in the end of life. She died. And then I went back up for the funeral. And then my mom died around Thanksgiving. And then her brother died right at the beginning of the new year. So right after Christmas, my uncle Dan died also of the same thing, also of substance use. So I have a cousin, Lindsay, who is amazing, but I don't really know her because she was also estranged from him, So it's like, and she also processed it a lot differently in front of our family. She was very visibly grief stricken, where I was like walking around, like introducing myself to people at my mom's funeral because some people didn't know who I was. And I would be a place where I have gone back to, and I remember being at a bar there one time and I was like, yeah, my mom was Kim Skeens. And they're like, Kim didn't have any daughters. And I was like, yeah, I have a sister too.
No.
And they like would believe me because she was such a party girl, and everyone talks about how sweet she was. And I would be like, stop saying that. Like, she wasn't that sweet if she had two daughters that she like didn't even call in their birthday, like give me some space in this conversation. So this may be another reason why I love talking about it. Like my mom's sister found a Facebook post of mine and like commented really mean things and called me like a piece of because I said that my mom left when I was a baby and I was having issues with it. Like that's just the kind of attitude that that family has always had towards me, with the exception of one of my aunts who I'm not speaking with because of political differences, because I am a queer person, you know, and I just have to put up boundaries with people. And unfortunately, it's with her because she's like my last person in that family. But, you know, at the end, I did pretty good without all of them. But when I left the funeral, I heard that everyone was talking about how I didn't present as grief stricken as like my cousin Lindsay or even my sister. Like, I don't think my sister cried. I remember kind of laughing because there was a poster board with butterflies and pink glitter on it that one of her cousins made. And it was pictures of her holding her kids that I had never seen before. So there was pictures of my mom and I at her funeral that I had never seen before. And it was like painting this picture of like, look at her beautiful life with her kids. And I grabbed my sister. And I was like, Danielle, get over here. And she was like, what? And I was like, look it. And she was like, don't do it, Crystal. Don't say anything. Cause she like, my sister knows that I'm going to be like, whoa, 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 whoa. But I didn't because my grandpa was there. It was a funeral for my and her brother. You know, I didn't want to make a scene like they do. My grandpa had just lost 2 of his kids and his wife, and he could barely sit through the funeral because he was also dying himself at the time. Like we knew that he had COPD and some other things. Also didn't take very good care of himself when he was younger. Also didn't have a lot of education, you know? So like there are so many factors when I think about, you know, sometimes people are like, oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And I'm like, well, it's not really about that. It's like about a bigger picture of like the world and how we need to change things.
So crikey. And so your sister, does she have similar views to you?
No. That's what I was going to say. I love my sister. And if she's ever listens to this, I hope that she knows that. And I use her name with love and care. Because I do care about her so much. She's like my little baby almost, you know, like we didn't have a mom. I just had this little blonde haired, blue eyed baby and like shared a room with. Yeah, we don't get along. Sometimes we actually got into a fight recently and didn't talk to each other for a little bit of a while, but like 2 girls, you know, like we're so different. Yeah. She doesn't have tattoos. She's taller than me. She has blonde hair. She has blue eyes. She's very fair skinned. I have dark skin. I have dark eyebrows. I have green eyes. I have long, dark, curly hair.
But you have the same mum because she still has the native side then coming through.
She'll be the exact same as I am, but she doesn't even. I love, now that it's summer, I'm like, oh, I'm going to get my tan on. And I know I should be careful in the sun because of skin cancer. Also, I get a really gorgeous tan in the summer, but my sister doesn't. She just gets a little burnt and freckly. And we used to argue about it when she was little. But yeah, no, my sister just doesn't really talk about my mom. And that's okay. Like we used to do it together. Like we didn't even say the word mom. I probably didn't say the word mom until like 6 months after my mom died.
Really?
So like even to say mom this much is weird for me to say.
Yeah, so. I'm not surprised because did you obviously you said you were raised by your grandparents and what have you. Did your dad ever have another partner? Did you have any kind of female figure from that side?
Actually, yeah, I had a few moms named Kim. So my mom's name was Kim, and then I had a stepmom named Kim when I was in like 3rd grade. It gets better. And then there was this woman that lived with us with her 2 sons, and her name was Kim. So it was like Kim number 1, Kim number 2, and Kim. I'm not even making that up. And I like love it. I still, whenever we go somewhere with my dad, if I see someone in their name tag says Kim in like a store, I always get them. I'm like, don't even look at her. Don't even go over there. So,
that's brilliant. My dad was a Steve and my mum's second husband was a Steve, and we used to obviously take the mickey out of that, but to be a third one is a really
I
weird
didn't
one.
get along with them very well, clearly, because you know I had a lot of stuff that was repressed. So, and I always feel bad crying. And I was like, you're not my mom. No one's my mom. You know, I want to go to grandma's house. And so I would go back and forth. So like if there was a mom figure there, my dad would scoop me, or it was an option where I could live with him for a little bit.
Yeah, you
With
seem like there would be, I mean, for obvious reasons, but a lot of angst there.
Oh yeah, there was a lot that I'm going through now as like a 38-year-old woman. It's so fun because it's like this freedom, like it's so much freedom of like being like, I'm living by myself, I'm single. I love being single. I didn't realize how needed it was for me to like process everything while I was single, because it's just like you said, it's like angst, but like I feel my best friend always tells me that it's like watching me go through my rebellious teenage years, because I'm like, I'm gonna wear a crop top, I'm gonna get another tattoo, I'm gonna get my nose pierced. But I'm also like 38. So like the family that I nanny for, I think they're so sweet, but I think they were like a little surprised when they met me in person, because I'm like, you know, I'm an art therapist, I'm like super serious. And then when you meet me, you find that I'm really just like this imaginary person going through her like imaginary friend for most of my life too, when I was a child. Not most of my life, but like most of my childhood, I should say.
Really?
Which I think got me through. I want to look at resilience in trauma, or just even trauma and in relationship to the imagination, because it got me through. Like maybe I was dissociating, maybe it was like an actual unicorn that got me through that day of not having a mom, you know. So like it's
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, certainly with imaginary friends, I mean, Drop Dead Fred, one of the greatest films in the world, but you know, having imaginary friends, and of course it has to be, I mean, I'm not a specialist, but it has to be some kind of coping mechanism for something else, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I can't look at my life and say that that's not true. I can only like see how clearly it happens. Like that I was in the Art Institute of Chicago being taught by art therapists when I was experiencing 4 deaths. Like, yeah, they didn't really know what to do with me. I didn't even know, my partner didn't know what to do with me. Like no one knew. And like, but I was still like, I was in an art bubble, you know, I was like in a program to like, you know, make art and do art, and like the museum, access to everything. Like I was, if you believe in like a higher power, like I believe that that was why I was in that environment. I thought I was there to be a therapist. I'm taking a break from like being a therapist now, and like processing a lot more of this, and just being a nanny and maybe working at a cute restaurant part-time, you know. And
Yeah, I
really
mean, it's interesting because I was going to ask you about, you know, whether all these wonderfully profound questions, you know, did this art like help you through your grief, and did you this and did you that? But it was the fact that you were there already and these things then happened to you. I mean, there's very much a whole, I'm a real believer of, oh, all of my lights just went out. Hold on. Thank you very much, IKEA lights. 2 seconds. I need to press this button and do something on here and turn my lights back on. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
Okay. Because you were, I'm a real believer of everything happens for a reason. So yeah, it's like really interesting that it was almost as if, okay, you're there already. She's got her coping mechanisms. So, and sorry, I've now gone on 2 tangents myself.
No,
it's almost
I love
as if, it's almost as if it's sort of gone, yeah. It's almost as if it's sort of gone, she's in a good place. We know she can handle it. So let's do everything. And then hopefully it will be whatever. But then as I'm saying that, I know that you then had, you know, the hysterectomy come afterwards. So I was like, yeah, I don't really know where to start with that. Did you grieve your mum?
There was one day where I would say that I like grieved her, one specific day, and I'll tell you about it really quickly, because it involves my brother, and why we're no longer speaking. So like I said, I was doing that art therapy program, and I was really busy, and I was at my internship that day. So I was a therapist that day, going room to people to do art therapy. They were in the hospital for brain injury. I loved the work that I was doing. And I remember I was switching art supplies in my bag, and I got a phone call, and it was from a number I didn't recognize. And for some reason I answered it. I normally don't, but I was like, I'll just answer it. And it was from a funeral home in Michigan. And the man was very upset with me. And I was like, whoa, 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 what's going on? And he said, everyone, he's like, people like you that do this makes me very upset. He's like, your family member has sat on our shelf through the holiday season, and we need to get you to pick up her remains. And I was like, my brother said that he took care of everything. All I had to do was sign a piece of paper. And that was the day that I grieved her, was the day that I signed her cremation papers, to like read the death certificate, to read her name, to sign off that it was done. I remember I just like, it was this cry that I had never cried before, and it hurt so bad. And it was like, you wanted someone there, but you knew that no one would ever be able to hold space for you. So you had to figure out how to do it for yourself. And I don't know if that goes from like years of coping without her that I was able to do that, but I will never forget that cry. It was so intense. And it was like, we talk about like gut wrenching cries. It was like a full body, like wrenching cry, you know, like my whole body hurt. And I was like, oh, I really was connected to her. Like I was in her body for 9 months. Duh. Like, she's no longer here physically. Something shifted. And now I'm reading. Now I'm reacting. So my brother didn't pick up her ashes. So then I apologized to the man on the phone. I told him the whole story. He apologizes to me. He's like, I had no idea. He was so sorry. He's like, I had no idea. And I was like, yeah, maybe next time you don't just like, you know. So he like asked for my number from a family member at one point. I was like, whatever, you're done. Like, no, I'm not going to date you, sir.
Great
like,
angle, but thanks.
Right. So my aunt, my mom's sister, and I were talking at the time, the one that was nicer to me for a while. And she called my grandfather. And apparently my grandfather had given my brother money to pick up the ashes, because you have to pay for it. Clearly she didn't have any money, blah, 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 blah. Luckily she didn't have a bunch of debt. Everything was taken care of. But my brother kept the money and didn't pay for the ashes and didn't pick them up.
Oh no. And this is the half brother that had been caring for your mum?
Yes, and had been going to the nursing home, and she raised him when he went to all his stuff, did all the things. He had just had a baby with this girl and kept the money from, I had sent him a baby gift, I remember, because they had just had a baby. And I made this beautiful box of like all these baby things, because I was going to be an auntie again. And I was so excited to meet Penelope. And then I will never meet Penelope, maybe, but I just couldn't talk to my brother after that. I couldn't, after stole money from my grandpa, I had to quit talking to him for a little bit. And then my grandfather was so mad that he didn't allow my brother to come to my mom's funeral.
Oh my
so I was
goodness.
Not with this drama.
How do you think this has affected, now I know you've mentioned your sexuality already, but how do you think this has mentioned your relationships regardless of sexuality?
Oh, my attachment style, for sure. When we talk about attachment styles and relationships and how we move within relationships, going to through school for my undergrad is in psychology and my graduate degree is in, you know, art therapy and counseling. You hear so much, you learn so much about attachment styles, and I'm like, oh, I'm anxious, or I'm avoidant, or I'm anxiously avoidant, or like I am all over the board, because I identify mostly as an anxious attachment, because my mom left when I was a baby. Like, if anyone remembers the videos in psychology class that they show you with the monkeys, and then the one monkey has the mom, and the other monkey has like a fake like mom that has like it's like a robot monkey. It was like way back in the 70s. It looks disgusting, but it's like a fake monkey. And the baby monkeys that had the actual mom like attached better in relationships throughout their lives, because the babies had never been held by their mom, the other babies. And I remember watching those, and I was like, oh, that's in a way where I was like, oh, that was me. Okay, cool. And I would get excited to see stuff like that, because I was like, oh, I didn't understand that's why I felt like that. But you're also not supposed to like self-diagnose in school. Like, how could you not, when it was
how can you not?
So clear?
You must have literally been diagnosing yourself all the live long day.
whole time. And, we think about attachment and all those things and abandonment. And anytime that would come up, I was like, oh, that's why my body does that. And I recently found out within the last few years that I had panic attacks my whole life, that I was a baby having panic attacks, and not at the fault of anyone who was around me. They all did what they could. My aunt says that she's like, oh, Crystal, it was so sad. We used to cry and we would like hold you and rock you and you wouldn't quit crying. And you just wanted your mom. And it was so sad. And it's like, people don't want me to talk about it because they can't handle that was the reality. Like, it was really hard. And I can imagine it's hard to hear someone say that, but like, that's my truth. Like, I live in a body now. Like, I'm on a lot of medication now to help me like sleep and like balance everything out. And
I'm sure.
Totally, yeah, because like my body, like I'm a naturally shaky person. Hardly anyone that knows me knows that I am, because I'm so good at hiding it, because I grew up in a society that shames people for having, any type of like disability or like mental health thing or anything.
Yeah, of course. And it's interesting because, I'm very fortunate that a lot of people on the podcast speak openly about therapy, but then there's another level to medicated therapy where some people are like, I see a therapist. Oh no, I don't need pills, don't need medication, because then that almost seems like another level. Did you obviously, because you have to be prescribed this medication. Are you still seeing a therapist, a counselor, psychiatrist?
I'm in between therapists right now because I went through like an income change. So another thing that I like to talk about when we talk about therapy is that it is a privilege to get therapy, and it's a monetary thing in the States. Because with my Medicaid that I'm on, because of my low income, it doesn't always cover therapy, and you don't always get I don't want to say you don't always get a good therapist, but I think it's important to have a good relationship with your therapist. So I'm looking for a better therapist than I had before, because I had some issues. So that's also something I advocate for, is who you're seeing. Like, is it someone that you can trust? And then I also see a primary care physician every 6 months and have tests done on my body, because I grow a lot of tumors, which is why I had to have a hysterectomy. So I also have a small tumor on my liver and one in my left breast. So I have like month mammogram, a 6 month CT scan. And I always wonder if that's because of my mom, because stress like manifests in the body in weird ways. So like, I'm just always, I don't know, like I'm curious about it. My mom, I found out when I was having my hysterectomy, also had something like I did, but I didn't have her to like talk about it. So that was like another thing. Yeah.
I mean, going back to when you were saying about what your body does through stress. Yeah. I mean, that's something that you'll never get that answer that you're looking for either way. But I guess just in terms of research and finding out for yourself, whether that gives you any kind of answers, for want of a better word. Moving on to your hysterectomy then, because and that's why we sort of initially connected, because it was the fact that you were only 35, you hadn't had children, and yet whether you wanted to or not, you literally now couldn't. Tell me about what happened.
Yeah, so I was having really bad periods, and all the doctors I saw, again, I was on insurance through school, so I got to see some pretty good doctors in Chicago, and everyone was like, oh, we can take out, I had tumors growing on my uterus, they're called fibroids, and I also had endometriosis really bad, and I was having my periods would last like a month, just the pain. I would go to the emergency room and then spend the night in the emergency room and go to class the next day, and I was always told like periods suck. Like, it's gonna be okay. And then I finally got sick of it, and I Googled fibroid doctor Chicago, not making that up. I remember it was like in December of one year. Got an appointment with this doctor here 3 months later. Saw him. I remember him asking me how I found him, and I said, I legit Googled you, because you typically need a referral to see someone like him, but somehow I magically got an appointment, and he was the nicest doctor I ever had. He brought me in immediately for an ultrasound, didn't make me like wait like the 2 weeks or schedule another appointment, did it immediately, brought another nurse in the room to like be kind and like hold my hand and let me get undressed by myself, like gave me time to get dressed, and then brought me into another room. Like most doctors just tell you everything when you're like on the table and you know you got the stirrups and the whole thing. They're
just
like,
a
well,
gown.
blah, blah, blah. And I remember he said, we need to do surgery, but I want to talk to you. Anyways, I want to be able to talk to you in private, you know, because like this is big and you need surgery. So I follow him to this room and I'll never forget it. It was almost like he had a cape. He was walking so fast, and we get to this room, it's beautiful view of the city of Chicago. The whole room is full of like books and like doctor's office stuff. And there's a giant table. I sit down and he tells me I need to have surgery. There's thank you cards everywhere. And I'm like, wow, I'm in a magical land. And I ask him, and I'm really scared because I've asked for a hysterectomy before at this point, and everyone tells me no. Or even when I tried to get off birth control when I was younger, the answer was no, you need to be on it. And I was like, can I have a hysterectomy? And he was like, absolutely. And I was like, what? Like, I was so shocked that he was so like, yeah. And he told me that he was like, it is my job to make you feel comfortable in your body. And I was just like, what? Doctors like this actually exist? And it's a male doctor? I was like, mine was blown. So yeah, we scheduled it. His nurse stayed after. We went over all the questions. She did my intake stuff. I had to have a bunch of like vitamins because I was anemic, because my tumors were so bad that I was anemic. The tumors were growing around my other organs, we would find out after surgery. So I would have needed a hysterectomy anyways. So he was initially proposing to remove the tutorus thing for me. Yeah. And I didn't want to have kids. And he was cool. He like didn't even need an explanation. He trusted me, and it was lovely. And they were going to schedule it for that summer. And I remember looking at the nurse and I was like, I'm so sorry. And I remember being embarrassed that I didn't have insurance, like it was going to end, which is terrible that society shames us for like not having access to basic health care. Like I could have died. And I asked her, I was like, can I maybe have it before June or May, whatever my graduation date is? Because my insurance runs out when I graduate. I don't know what's going to happen next. And it seems really important. And she's like, you know what? He doesn't always work on Wednesday, but he's going to this week, and I'll never forget it. And she wrote my name down, and I was just like, I was so happy. I was so happy to finally be listened to. And then like, to have people being like, it's okay if you don't have any money, you're gonna be okay. Like that's so scary. Like that feeling of being like, I need money to like be alive. So I cry when I talk about it because I'm so grateful for them. And my surgery, my dad said it lasted 3 hours longer than it was supposed to because there were so many complications. I lost a lot of blood. I ended up being okay. The first thing I did when I woke up was put my hand on my stomach, and I'll never forget like how much different it felt. Like I could feel the difference because that's how bad my uterus was. And everyone kept telling me it was okay. Yeah. And it was just, a rock was like taken out of me. And I just remember being like, I'm going to have like a semi-normal life now. Like I'm not going to be disrupted by this pain. So, and blood.
My God. Yeah, that's, you know, obviously, is that why you would be anemic? Yeah, I was anemic because the fibroids, they blood. I don't really remember how it all works. I kept my ovaries. I still have eggs. They get released into my body and go and dissolve in my bloodstream. Fun fact. I learned a lot. Yeah, I know. I asked all the questions. So whenever my primary care doctor, I always will ask on my social media if anyone has any hysterectomy questions, because I'm going to go talk to someone that knows a lot about it. I mean, that's quite, that's quite a serious topic. And I will put your account on here because I think it is one of those things, whether it's an elective surgery or not, or even going through the change and menopause and everything, like people just don't really talk about it.
Oh, and it's so important. And I've met so many people with you. I always like to say people with the uterus because I want to include the trans community as well in these conversations that I have about uterus removal and hysterectomies, because like it was hard for me to get a hysterectomy. Like, can you imagine? Like, I can't, and it's not fair, and it's terrible. And yeah, like we need to include everyone in the conversation who has, if you have a uterus, like it's okay. We can talk about it if you want to. Not everyone does too.
No, yeah, exactly. But it also, you're making me think about that, the line in Friends, and Rachel says, no uterus, no opinion.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I remember it happened during the women's marches starting again. What was it, like the fifth wave of feminism happening again, whatever it was. And I was in Chicago marches, and they're holding signs up that say no uterus, no opinion. And I was like, but I don't have a uterus, but I have an opinion. Like, where do I fit now? So that's again why I'm always excited when people want to talk to me about these things. Tell me where my community is.
Yeah. God, yeah, we might have to add another one into that. So when because I know that you and your friend are going to be starting a podcast as well, and obviously you're so open on your social media and stuff, like, why? The obvious question is, why do you feel it's so important, to have these conversations? Because people aren't talking about it, and you want to make sure that people aren't alone. And I'm not answering that question for you, kind of have. Yeah. But what I meant was what has, how am I trying to word it? Let me have a think how I'm trying to word this. Like, what has that voice done for you, starting this community and having these conversations?
What has it done for me? It not only just doing the basics, like you said, like creating community and like meeting people. I always thought when I was going through all of those hard things and continue to, I remember even when I date and I'm going through a bad breakup, I always try to remind myself that people are watching me, whether or not I know it. And I have a lot of friends. I will say this till I die. I want to go to my funeral so bad because I have the best friends in the whole world, and to have all of them in one room. And then my friend is like, why don't you just have a party? And I'm like, yeah, but like, it's just nice to think about when I think about my funeral, is having all of my friends there because they're so lovely. And because my friends are people I care so much about, I know people are always watching me. So like in thinking of other generations of people that are younger than me or older than me, or just people in the world, they can see that really bad things can happen to you, but it's also like how you choose to move through it. And yes, there are things like I have a lot of privilege in a lot of the situations that I've been in, being a white presenting person. And like, how can I use that privilege to uplift the Black community? Black women are believed, I think, a -% about their pain. There's an actual statistic, but it talks about doctors listening to Black women when they talk about their period pain, and it is doctors dismiss Black women at a rate that is, I wish I could remember the number. I have a terrible memory because of all the medication that I'm switching to, but please forgive me, but there is a number, and I want to also bring that into the conversation when we talk about it. And then like also uplifting the trans community. Like there are more people out there like me, and if talking about it is something I want to do, yeah.
I was going to ask you, do you think you'll ever be kind of over it? But I guess that's just a stupid question because who knows, right?
Stupid. And I think that's like a natural question too, because I've asked myself that, but I know that there is no answer for it. And I also wonder if I will be over it when I die. Like I wonder that. I wonder if there's like because I've never died before.
No, exactly. And by the sounds of it, your funeral is going to be banging, so it doesn't matter.
It's amazing. We'll make sure you get an invite. I also just claim that on when people are mean to me. Like my funny thing that I say now is like, you're not allowed to go to my funeral if if you're going to be rude to me on my social media. I do have a guest list now because it's going to be amazing and it's my choice. Like, why not? So
100%.
Cool.
I'm not concerned we haven't like really talked about the hysterectomy side of things, but my kind of, for want of a better word, my sort of final question about the hysterectomy side of it is that how has it affected you now? You're what, 3 years post-surgery?
Yeah, 3 years post-surgery. This is a great question. At the time, my partner at the time got a new job and had to go away for 6 months of training, and he missed my graduation. So I dropped him off at the airport, went and defended my thesis the same day I remember my dad was visiting. So then I had that, defended my thesis, graduated the next day. And then he came back 6 months later. And I, during that time, had to sell our house here in Chicago, and we have relocated to Michigan. His job moved him to Grand Rapids, and we were in Grand Rapids. I stayed until 2020, right before the pandemic. We broke up in December 2019, January 2020, and I was going to leave, and then the pandemic happened. So during that time that I was in Grand Rapids for I think it was a year and a half, I was able to have the time because I was looking for work. Art therapy is viewed differently per state in the United States. So it's not viewed as a mental health profession in Michigan. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to work as an art therapist because they wouldn't let me take the counseling licensing board thing. So that was really imposter syndrome-y and gross. And my job that I had gone to school for 9 years to do was viewed as a volunteer position.
Yeah, not recognized. No way.
It was great. Made some great friends. Nikki, Eddie are my favorite people in Grand Rapids. We have Kristen and Leslie. I've made some amazing friends, made a bunch of changes in my life. And now I'm back in Chicago getting ready to do a bunch of art gigs. And I'm so happy because I found medication and a good therapist while I was in Grand Rapids because I was having some abdominal pain. We just get it checked out every once in a while and I'm good. It sounds terrible, but it actually worked out in my favor I legit had to be removed from a major city and put in the country, and the universe was like, okay, now you have to take care of yourself.
I asked you for a podcast or an Instagram account that you love.
Oh, yes. Okay. So as soon as you said that, I knew it and I was so excited. My favorite podcast is Terrible Thanks for Asking. The person, her name is Nora McInerney.
Okay.
Have you heard of her?
No.
She has an amazing TED Talk. You would love her. She's like the United States version of you. She does.
Oh, she's not the blonde girl. The blonde woman who spoke about her husband dying and she remarried.
Yes.
Love her.
She's amazing. I love her. I follow her on Instagram. I'm dying for her to interview me. So if she hears this, I'm dying to have a talk with you because when all of that was happening, no one knew what to do with me, but someone in my class legit said to me, I don't know what to say, but I listen to this podcast and it reminds me of you. So maybe you should check it out. And it's called Terrible Thanks for Asking is her podcast. And it's the idea of people asking and you're like, terrible, thanks for asking. You know, because when people asked me how I was doing when my mom died, and I was like, I'm kind of having a bad day. They don't know what to do with you,
Yeah.
So
oh God, I was only asking to be cursory. Bye.
Right. And then people say things like, but you're so strong. And I'm like, but I didn't choose this. I learned how to walk again at the end of grad school. It was like the universe was like, and now here we go. We're going to make sure that, and I didn't have a typical hysterectomy. I was sliced open because I had an 8-pound tumor attached to my uterus. So I had to I couldn't sit up for a long time. I had to relearn how to walk before they would let me go home. I was in the hospital for 4 days working on my thesis. What?
and that was in the picture on your Instagram because your books are there in your hospital bed and that was your thesis that you were working on in the hospital. Oh, thank you so much, Crystal. Please keep in touch. I'm really looking forward to seeing your journey and everything, and we'll stay in touch. And I can't thank you enough for sharing your story.
Yes, no, thank you so much for having me. It's been like, this is my favorite thing that I've done in years. So thank you. And you've inspired me to revisit my thesis. I'm also writing a book of letters to my mom. So that will be out maybe next year. Yeah, because I didn't get to say a lot of things to her. So why not make it a book? People can buy it.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, let's monetize that. Absolutely.
Money.
Well, it will be on your Instagram, right? So I'll find out all about it.
Thank you. I love you. Thank you. It was lovely.
Lots of love. See you.
Bye.
Bye.